Welcome back to the Compressor Guru. Today we are going back together with step one of the 325 Quincy we have in here on a speed rebuild, which isn't really a speed rebuild because we had to order more parts once we tore it apart and it slowed us down by a day. However, the machine was really dirty inside and out, so it gave me an extra day to get some stuff cleaned up. This is the crankshaft. Right in here is the drive pin for the oil pump. And if you can see that pin is straight across. At the corners, the pin, if the pump is running hard or if the pump is binding or anything, there will be a little V mark on each side of that roll pin. And that's when we have to take this bearing off and push a new roll pin through, because if that roll pin cuts all the way through or breaks, the compressor will lose oil pressure because the pump won't be turning. That being said, that roll pin's fine. The roller bearings are fine. We don't have to change them. However, because of all the sludge you saw in the crankcase, which I can't believe it was even getting oil, but because of all the sludge, we want to inspect the inside of the crank, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. First off, this brass plug right here is not a plug. It is a unloader that if the compressor is running too slow, it won't develop oil pressure. And because this machine has a hydraulic unloader, it will actually stop the machine from pumping air if you don't have oil pressure. What you have in here is a spring and a weight and a plunger that fits neatly on that hole. And I have seen these in the strippings. Actually, I'm surprised already because I thought that would be all gooky. That's a highly technical term, gooky. These just magically appeared in my hand. Anyway, so you have a little weight in here that's made of brass. And when this compressor spins, I think 350 or 400 RPM, this will collapse and seal against the hole here. So when it's spinning fast enough, that closes, and when it slows down, that opens and then drops your oil pressure. I'm going to leave this out for a minute, and we will get in there with a pick and make sure there's no junk in there. Also, you have it is not a plug. And I have to think about which way it's going because it's upside down. And I got it right. This is an orifice. And this is plugged. Does not surprise me, but there's a tiny little hole there. That's called an orifice, a tiny little hole. Sometimes it's a big hole, like people's mouths. But when this has oil pressure, this sprays a tiny little stream out here and helps oil this roller bearing. And that will have to be cleaned, and I'll run a tiny little drill bit or perhaps a torch cleaner. I'll put through that and make sure that's open. If that's too big, we'll have a hard time getting oil pressure, and if it's too small or plugged, you won't oil the bearing. On the other end is an Allen screw, and you can't see it from over there, but trust me, it's just a little pipe plug with an Allen head in it. And it's tight. Anyway, this is just a plug. There's no orifice in it. And I'm going to set that right there temporarily. And I'm going to grab a welding rod. Hold on. So I'm going to take a welding rod. And if you had a nice long drill bit, you can do the same. But Val, this is going to be a good, you're at a better angle than that camera. But we want to push through here and make sure we didn't have any deposits of sludge in there. And I have had compressors, mostly out of the strippings, the coal mines.
Do it one more time. Oh. Wait a minute.
See it coming out down here? Mm-hmm. This is part of the manufacturing process, this is part of the machining process, that this is hollow here, and it's hollow clear to here, and the easy way to get the oil from here to where they bore the holes for the oil to feed the connecting rods is to simply run a drill bit diagonally down and connect those two journals. It serves a further purpose by having a space for that oiler. Carburetor cleaner, I'm going to shoot through these holes, then I'll put it back together, and then we're going to polish the journals. Very surprised I didn't have a bunch of clogging in there.
That was fun.
Uh-huh. Okay, put this one back in. I cleaned this, and believe it or not, what I found, it didn't have a drill bit small enough, and I couldn't find my torch cleaners, but I made sure it was open and nicely open with a wire from a wire brush. And it just went through there beautifully, and as you can see, I can blow through it with the carb cleaner.
You could really show it like this direction, and I could actually see something more than your fingers.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Because that one's not telescoping. Okay.
Put it back in. I don't think you can switch these. I'm pretty sure the threads are different. But if you can switch them, don't. This piece goes on the pulley side of the crankshaft. And last, we'll blow off the little unloader with carb cleaner. And yes, we go through a lot of this. Slip that in. On some compressors, you'll get to this point, and this will be a plug. And you'll find those on 350 Quincy's on some applications for like a drag line where they're run by a diesel engine, and it would be possible to lose oil pressure when the diesel engine would drop down to an idle. And that way, even if this is running slow, if this is plugged off, you don't lose your oil pressure. Anyway, this crank is nice and clean on the inside, and it's going to be nice and clean on the outside. In previous videos, we've always been able to change the rod journal with a bushing in the Ingersolls. This is like an automotive crankshaft. It's pressure fed, and you don't change these journals. All you old gearheads out there, you'll know what I'm going to mean when I say this, but this is an educational channel, so you might learn something also. We're going to shoelace these. I have some 320 sandpaper, a light-duty piece of clothesline rope, and some lubricating oil. What we do, we wrap a piece of 320 all the way around. I'll tell you what, we'll put paper. And we'll wrap it all the way around. And then we'll wrap this, we call it a shoelace, but by wrapping this around, we keep equal pressure on all sides of the circle. And work it up and down a little bit. And we're going to go a little more. There's no wear, but there's actually some rust marks from the contaminated oil on the shaft, and we want to clean it up as nice as we can. Do not That's good enough for me. You may look at that and say, I still see a couple little marks, but we don't want to change the clearance by taking too much off. We're not going to take much off with 320 on steel. But do not go around and start doing this and say, oh, I get all four sides like that. You'll end up with this out of round. That's why you wrap it, and that's why you use a shoestring or a light piece of rope and wrap it around, and that way you keep pressure on all four, the infinite number of sides on a cylinder. I realized you were going to go infinite number of
You
sides.
didn't spray that one yet.
Oh, we're all wet from this and the other one. And
Okay,
thanks, Val.
I'm just trying to help.
I know you
That's
are.
what I do.
I know.
And I know you appreciate me helping.
I got a attaboy from my high school plane geometry teacher when we were asked to write a proof, and I loved writing proofs. When we were asked to write a proof for define a circle. And essentially, I said it is an infinite number of points all in equidistance from one point. Because it's an infinite number of points, there's no angle to a radius, and I didn't have to define radius, and I thought it was just a neat way of looking at things, and I've never forgot that because I got a eyebrow raised and strange look, and the geometry teacher went, "That's right," and I guess he'd never heard of it or thought of it that way. And that one, we got a slight mark there, but I'm not going to dig into it anymore. That shaft is beautifully smooth, and I'm perfectly confident in it holding the bearing and doing well once together. So that was the crank as far as cleaning it and polishing the journals. We already inspected the roller bearings. We're not putting any new bearings in the main bearings. This is a main bearing, this is a main bearing, and the races where they run are beautiful also. So I am a proponent of if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Moving on. This is the oil pump. This is the slot that fits into the end of the crankshaft. And sometimes you'll see when you have damaged that roll pin that we were talking about, you'll see these edges messed up. Everything's nice and straight, and you can see the race in there, and the race is perfect. It's got wear, but there's no chunks, no pits, nothing wrong with it. That race will last another 20 years. Now there's no ring there, and that O-ring is necessary to keep oil pressure going to the connecting rods. Now I'm taking my pick And I'm digging that oil O-ring off because we're going to put a new one on, but we're also going to tear this pump down a little further. I'd say that oil, yeah. There we go. And you know what that's good for? Nothing. Okay, so we turn this back over, and there's actually a up and down to this. I'm going to put it back in. I'm going to show you the down. Maybe I will. Okay, so this is the way it would look after you got that O-ring off if you didn't have it half popped out. And what we're going to do is we're going to push on that spool on the inside, and we're going to hang on to everything as it comes out. And then we're going to set it down here, and we're going to pull it out of the ring. And you've got little springs. Going each way in there. And you've got 4 small vanes, and they're beautifully smooth. I've seen these wore so bad that they wear flat down to there. And I felt comfortable not tearing this apart, trusting that the pump would work because it was working before, even with all that sludge. But I wanted to show you that this is the old style, this is the vane oil pump, and we're going to clean up and we're going to slip it back together. One important thing you want to look at here, and I'm going to do it without putting that in, but there's a little tiny roll pin in the bottom of the opening here, and this opening goes to that roll pin. This compressor will make oil pressure running in either direction and without having to adjust anything. And now on the new oil pumps, on the Quincy's, there actually is an adjustment on them, but where you have to change the plug and 6 bolts to make them pump either rotation. But right now, if the compressor was running in that direction, it would make oil pressure. If you shut it down, and let's say you had a power outage and the power company came out and you had 2 wires reversed in your 3-phase, and it starts up and it runs the other way, that slip ring will shift. And I just shifted it one way there. That's where we were originally pumping that direction. When that machine would start up and change rotation, that slip ring, can you see that slip ring move?
Kind of. What I see is your fingers moving.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Yeah, I can see that now.
So with that slip ring slipping this way, it'll make oil pressure pumping in this direction. Now that doesn't mean you want it running the wrong way, because the fan blades on the flywheel need to cool the compressor. But this, you can get different flywheel if you have a left-hand application for, say, an engine. But this will run in either direction and make oil pressure. I think it's a pretty neat solution. I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to do a little more cleaning inside of this, and then we'll go back together real quick. I've washed all these parts in gasoline, washed them off, and put the springs back in. I'm going to put each of the 4 vanes back in a slot.
If you move this,
this goes in here like that. So what we want to do is, when this goes in there like that, we want to make sure this spot is on the correct side, so I'm going to flip it. No, I'm not going to flip it over. I'm going to leave it just like that. I'm going to put it down over the top, and I'm going to work those 4 veins in. You want to stand. Okay, sit back down. Yes, folks, I am married so that I can put vein oil pumps back together. She had to put the second camera down and help, and I forgot how finicky these are to get back together. I probably haven't done one of these since the mid-80s. Anyway, so it's back together. It's back together the correct way, so this goes towards that little roll pin on the bottom, and the O-ring is not on because that O-ring will not go through that brass bushing on the shaft. You might be able to flex it and push it through otherwise, but we'll put this back through and then we'll put the new O-ring on once it's back together.
So it helps hold it in there.
Oh yeah, you won't get this out without pulling that O-ring. What helps hold it in there too is the flat plate and 6 bolts.
Yeah, that's just beside the point. I'm going with the belief this little O-ring does it all.
Sure.
He's mighty and powerful. Now what's wrong?
There we go.
Oh.
Now, let's see if I can turn this and see if that, and that slip ring goes either way just like it's supposed to.
Cool.
Okay,
Where's the O-ring?
over the O-ring pile.
Oh.
And
Do you not have to put a gasket on there?
there's a little static O-ring and it's still thick and it'll squeeze.
Can I see it? Oh, thank you.
And I'm certain that's in the kit, but that way we have a spare if we ever need it. Or the customer will have a spare because he'll get the spare parts.
I take it that that's not a gasket that really,
It's a big O-ring.
okay, that O-ring doesn't wear out very often.
No, I've never
Because it
seen.
doesn't get much wear.
No, it gets squeezed and it sits there for years and years and years. So, okay, while we're talking about it, I'll put that O-ring on. Sure. Now this is an all-inclusive O-ring kit. Because I see an O-ring in here that does not belong in this compressor. So when they sent this aftermarket kit, basically it includes all possibilities. Oh, and we got a new quad ring, and I know where that goes. There's our O-ring. We'll make sure it's the right size. Would you like to look at that?
Would you like to tilt the thing toward me a little?
I can't do that and have the O-ring on there.
Oh, yes, I can see it right there.
Okay.
It's the O-ring.
That one's
How many O-rings does it get?
just one.
That one's the exact size, but not big enough to go around it. I think that's the one.
No, I don't.
Okay. Do we pinch that together at all?
Okay. We slip it over. I went to a class on O-rings one time.
On how to slip it over into there?
An a Buna and low O-ring
You can tilt that a little now. The O-ring won't come out.
is designed to stretch for application but not remain stretched
There we go.
for, or installation but not remain stretched for the application. And that's ready to go. Now, one thing that I'm going to do while we're messing with the oil pump is I'm going to turn this to where it's 90 degrees or horizontal. This goes back together and it will go like that when we go back on. we have to match that roll pin that drives this in the end of the crank. So what I'll do is I know that this is running this way, and when I go to put the crank in, I'll make sure that I know which way that runs, and then we're not trying to fight it in. When it's close, we'll be able to move it just a little bit and it'll slip right on. And that's actually almost the next thing we're doing. But I'm going to gather up these extra O-rings, put them back over in the parts table for now. It is time to put the crankshaft back in. We are going to take and we're going to slip it on through. I have not put the seal housing on yet. And I have a new seal, but the seal housing does not have it in yet. I'm going to slip this through. That only goes one way. There's a notch in there for that. And now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to look at the end of that. So we're going to want to turn this 90 degrees to match that. So this is the gasket for the oil pump, or if you look up the part number for this in Quincy, they'll call it a carrier bearing. The whole assembly is a carrier bearing assembly. So this is the proper gasket for it, but you notice we've got 8 holes, but 6 are an equidistance apart. So we have extra holes, and therefore the oil journals. Don't put it like that, because this lets oil get from the crankcase to the oil pump. So if you put that on covering that hole, the machine's only going to live for a few minutes before it starves and burns up for lack of oil. So it's very important to make sure that all the oil, that all the holes, including bolt holes, but especially the oil holes. This one runs the hydraulic unloader. We'll talk about it later, but you want to make sure the gasket goes on the correct way and all those holes are showing open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it on the bearing or the housing. And remember, I have this turned horizontal, but it's obvious that this is going to be easier if I turn this vertical. So I'm going to turn this vertical. And hold that there. Slip that in there, and there. Now all we have to do is line our holes up. They're lined up, and put a bolt in. That was easy. So we take our bolts, get a couple started, and then we find the rest of our bolts.
Is that your oil filter?
Yeah, don't you remember? You couldn't
I
even see
do.
through it.
I do. It looks pretty awesome.
And we're in fast forward mode. And our last one, click, there we, my built-in torque meter said that's just right. Click, click, click. Okay, so we are now getting to the technical side, and actually the difficult side of reinstalling the crank. Now, because we didn't change the race, we didn't change the roller bearings. You remember when I tore this apart, I put a personal handcuff device, I mean a zip tie through a hole and kept these together. Now I found one very, very thin cloth shim right here, or paper shim, and I took it off. And I took it off for a reason, and that would have been the wearing the bearings. Now, that feels really good right there. And I'm going to explain this rather than to try to show it, because I don't want to mess up what's already set. The new seal's not in here. And let's say we had to change the roller bearings. So we go on here and we tighten this down. So here's the theory. We have brand new, if we had brand new bearings in here, we would have no idea how many shims we would need to tighten this up. So we would take with no shims, and we'd put our bolts in, and we'd tighten them up just slightly till we got a little bit of drag on the crankshaft. Then we take shims, and in the new gasket kit you get more shims. But in the new gasket kit you would take your shims and you would squeeze as many in that as you could, and maybe add one thin one. You would take it back off, and you'd put your four, and I'm only going to use 2 bolts on this because the other 2 have the seal over. But you take and you put your...
Now, is there a top and bottom to that, or it doesn't matter?
This doesn't matter. And you tighten these down. And when you tighten these down, if you didn't change this, if you didn't feel a whisker more drag, you might have to take one of the very, very thin shims out. And if you do, and it causes a lot of drag, you put that shim back in, then you're going to go, but Bud, if I put the shim back in and it still feels tight, that's because the race didn't move. That's when you get a big brass drift and your hammer, and you roll this around in here, and you get on the counterweight, and you bump, bump, bump. And I don't mean wham, I mean bump, bump, bump. And this will loosen back up because the race moved back out. And you can get a lot of time in shimming one of these after you've changed some bearings. And after you do it 200 or 300 times, no, after you do it a few times, you learn these tricks about putting your seal housing on, tighten it down, get it close, and start with that number of shims. But you put it on here, you tighten it down. But that thumb brace I wear a lot, it's about 2 years old, and I got it absolutely filthy greasy the other day, and I washed it with carb cleaner, and it came out okay. But it smells, and that's okay. I'm a gasoline kind of guy, and carb cleaner's like nice men's cologne to me. But that's beside the point. I ordered another one today, so I have a dress thumb brace and I have a work thumb brace. Is that ridiculous? Okay, back to work. So we tightened this up, and you saw the little bit of drag we had. We didn't gain anything on drag there, so I am actually going to take one tiny little shim out and see if we pick up a little bit. And with the amount of years on these bearings, to think that they are just going to be exactly like the day they were new, no, chances are there's been a couple thousands wear out of them. So this does not surprise me that that didn't change things, even after I took a couple of shims out of this already, because I did take a paper shim out at the parts washer. We're going to take another paper shim out, and if I need that, we have a new one.
I was just gonna say, why would you do that? What if you need it back?
But if I need it back, we use a new one, babe. So, back together. And you'll notice I didn't put the seal in this yet. Honey, can you answer why I didn't put the seal in this yet?
You're not ready,
Why am I not ready?
because we ordered a new part. Nope, that's not the right answer.
Because I'm putting this on and off, getting my crankshaft set,
Yeah,
and I don't want to be putting the seal on and off, on and off. Once I have the right number of shims, then I'll put the seal on it.
does the
and
seal go in underneath that?
seal goes in this space right here.
Yeah, does it go on underneath that? Like, this thing we're screwing on now, bolting on now?
It goes in it.
So you just slide it in there?
Well, I'll do it on a bench. I'm not going to do it here. What I'll show you. What do you say we do a show and tell kind of thing?
Yeah,
Okay,
I thought that's what we always did.
that's pretty much what we do. Except they don't see me washing parts.
I try to avoid that myself.
Yes, you do. Now, we have just a whisker. When I say a whisker, it's just a little harder to turn, and I'm not gonna put a shim back in. That's just about as good as we could ask for right there. So, what I'm gonna do is we're gonna take that off for the last time. I'm gonna put the seal in it, and Val can tape me putting the seal in it.
So you do take this off, then you put the seal in, then you put this back on.
That's what I wanted to tell you, but
That's what I was asking.
I didn't think that's what
I
you were
said,
asking.
do you unbolt that thing and take it off and then put the seal in and then put it back on? And you said, no, it fits right in there. Well,
I was confused on the.
You are confused.
You're confused.
Yes, folks, 36 years. Is that right?
20 happy ones. We got married in 1985. We're up to 20 happy years of marriage.
And it's 2021.
Should I tell them why they're happy years now?
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna leave the shims there. I'm gonna rinse this one more time. But the reason they're happy years now is because in 1999 I got right with Christ. I asked him into my heart. I've never looked back. I'm not saying I haven't screwed up. I'm not saying I haven't fallen, but my God forgives me. And since I've found out that my God forgives me, I've been able to forgive myself. And the anger and the drunkenness and some of the other issues I had went away. And you know what? The happy years with my wife are since I've gotten right with God. If you ever want to talk to me about it, contact me through the website. I'd be glad to talk to you any day about who my God is and what He's done for me. Okay, we are at the seal installation station.
Seal installation station?
I won't use this audio anyway.
No, please do.
Okay, so we're at the seal installation station. Yeah, it's a metal test bench we built years ago. And I already stuck it in, and it's stuck, and I don't want to pry it out to show you starting it in. It's a little bit crooked, and I got a nice little, well, nice old big wrist pin, and I'm going to tap it on the side that's high. Now straighten it out a little. voila. And that's all there is to it. Push it in straight, push it in straight, try to have a flat piece of iron or a wrist pin out of a big old engine. These are wonderful tools. Anyway, and we're ready to put a little bit of oil on that seal so we can slide it on the shaft very easily. We'll take our shim pack and we'll put her back together. So you may have noticed through the rebuilding that I'm very particular about clean surfaces, clean interiors, clean dirt and heat. But dirt is an enemy of anything mechanical. Whether that dirt causes a scratch on a bearing surface, whether it keeps something from being cool, like that intercooler that was totally clogged up. And so for either heating, cooling, or friction, we want and by the way, this is one surface, and there's an elevated surface here where the bearing rides. So now we got to work it up onto that elevated surface. Take that screw out. So we certainly want to be clean. There we go. Click. Okay, my torque meter says that is good. Beautiful. Now, since the seal's in there, this is going to go back to work, but I want to make sure that the main bearings are lubricated.
I don't see anything that looks like a bearing.
Well, it's the end of the bearing. Okay. And you can see the end of that bearing.
I can. I could. There it is.
Well, I got a little oil on there, now I got a little oil everywhere. So we have cleaned this, and it's 1,000% better than it was before. We're going to slip it back in to the oil filter hole. And I need a ratchet because my thumb hurts too bad to run that in. I'll tighten that up. I'll put my bolts back in here, and we'll be back with one more thing. We're going to put the hydraulic unloader in. You know what? We're not going to. We'll do that in another episode. Anyway, I'm going to tighten things up here. Put 6 bolts or four more bolts back in the oil pump. Tighten this up. Tighten that up. And I want to thank you. This was crankshaft cleanup, shoelacing, and reinstallation into the crankcase on the 325 Quincy. Thank you. Like and subscribe. Check out the description. Our webpage is there, thecompressorguru.com. And anything we can do to help you, feel free. Shoot me an email. Leave a comment. Like and subscribe. God bless. Have a great day.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Compressor Guru. Please hit like and subscribe and use the notify bell so you will know when the next new episode is released from The Compressor Guru. God bless you and have a great day.